Peter's book is all of them really. They have their niches, in basketball, but particularly Tom, the one you read, "Stop the Tall Man,
Really?
Save the Tiger," like.
Yeah. This one has broad appeal. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, very broad appeal, and I'd love to
yeah,
think the way you said it earlier about how it could help people that find themselves
exactly.
with manipulative. It couldn't be more healing to know that someone else went through it and came out on the other side like this.
Peter, when you're describing the book to someone, give me the elevator. What is this book?
Yeah, great question. Well, long time ago, I married the love of my life, and in so doing, I unwittingly married into a tiny but destructive little religious cult. And for years, I went along with the cult leader to get along with my wife because I loved her and I adored her, and I knew the guy wasn't going to go away, but I never dealt with it. And so slowly but surely, I was the frog in the pot of boiling water. And I too became brainwashed, but it was never enough. I was never pure enough or devoted enough.
Yeah.
So my wife left me, and really was all orchestrated by the cult leader. And so marriage destroyed, family destroyed. But at my lowest point, the Lord rescued me. He opened my eyes and ears to the truth, and He used family and friends to rescue me. And I am a million times stronger now because of what I went through, because I don't look to a guru or a family friend or whatever for answers. And I don't doubt my every thought and every word. I go straight to the Lord. And I know that I am a son of God and He loves me. And there's nothing I can do to
Yeah.
earn my salvation.
Yeah, that takes me to the first question I had. And Don, feel free to jump in, but I have a list. I told you I had questions.
Run with it, man.
So,
No, I can't wait to hear you. Yeah.
how would you describe to somebody on the outside of this the difference between the cult experience you went through and just fundamentalist legalism,
Hmm.
right? Because
Well,
it's a list of rules that you have to live by to meet some kind of standard.
okay. I would say the biggest difference would be like if I had questions of Uncle Robert. So he was a little cult leader. We called him Uncle Robert. He wasn't related to anybody. But if I would have questions of him, the answers were never to answer my question. It was always, why are you so dumb, Peter? Why can you not understand things? So they kind of call that gaslighting. And cult leaders don't like to be questioned. So
Yeah.
when we talk about like legalism, they're interpreting the Bible, and I think for the most part they mean well, right? Uncle Robert didn't mean well. He wanted absolute total control over all of us. And if that meant perverting the gospel, so be it. And he did.
That was the hammer that he used to control, right? Because religion is in my mind like I don't know, like a substitute for people to reign over you in some way, right? And so they use a godly approach to controlling you, which is not godly at all.
Right. Well, to give the readers kind of an idea of like, well, what do you mean? How did he do that? So again,
Sure.
cult leaders don't like to be questioned. They want you to follow everything that they say and do. They're very paranoid because they don't want outside eyes looking in. And oftentimes, Uncle Robert would read from the Bible. He knew it quite well, but then
Yeah.
he would always give his little perverse little spin on it. But
Mhm.
really, the guilt and shame was also used to control us because we could never do anything right. I could never do anything right. I could never love my wife the way he thought I should. And he, by the way, would tell this story when he was a young child of how he disobeyed his father. He was
Yeah.
using a little slingshot and he killed the family
Yep.
lamb, right? And he told it in such a way that that was the only time in his life he sinned, right? Like Jesus was sinless. Uncle Robert only had one. And
Yeah.
so obviously, well, how could you be humble? How can you say that you need to be saved if you've only sinned once? But he
Right.
would put himself on a pedestal
Mhm.
in such a way that was effective in shaming us, in controlling us. And that's very different from legalism.
Oh, absolutely. However, I will tell you some of the people I've seen with the similar control personality as you describe Uncle Robert, they are in church leadership.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I've experienced it where it's not necessarily about pastoring or shepherding a church. It's more about the control and being the person in charge, like that type A personality that has to be the person who is in charge, and you can't question them. And you end up with parishioners who they will tell you you cannot question the pastor because he is God's appointed person. He's the anointed in that role. And this is when I got on a rant with Don on the phone call. And all these verses flooded into my, because I've experienced this, and all these verses flooded into my mind about, okay, you know, we're we are also part of the order of Melchizedek, right? We're all priests.
Right.
Uh, and not only that, we're joint heirs with Christ. We are in God's mind, we are equal heirs with Jesus. There's no, hey, a pastor's here or,
Wow.
Uncle Robert's here and everybody else is down here, or, depending on how many levels you were down here and your wife was here, right? And Uncle Robert was here. I see this as a problem in less controlling ways, or and certainly not embedded in a family the way your experience was, but this is more prevalent probably than people think. I immediately made connections to people I know, unfortunately, in church leadership who have that controlling nature. Have you not seen that?
Well, and here's how I would describe it. So I don't know how many people are going to be listening versus being able to see as well. I
Sure.
would, instead of saying like Uncle Robert was here and Christ is here, Jesus is the gate, right? He is the gate. He is the way into the sheepfold. He is the only gate. And anybody who tries to get into the sheepfold, remember, there's a goat they're trying to climb over. That's a false teacher. Well, the way Uncle Robert was set it up was like, again, like if Jesus is the gate, he would be a prior gate before. Like you had to go through his gate to get to Jesus. That is wicked and unbiblical. And yet
Yes.
that's what he did. And I believe that is also one of the defining characteristics of cult leaders, that they will act as the gate to whatever faith that you believe in. Like you can only be saved through that person.
I wow, a few things here. Just recapping what you both said. Um, so Tom, when I tried to describe the book to you before you read it, and you had the reaction I thought you would have, except to the extent that where you said you actually have known folks like Uncle Robert, and actually, with all my time growing up, at Camp of the Woods, going to Houghton College, and even, going to church out here in Buffalo, I can honestly say I have never met. I've seen people maybe with a slice of this or a slice of that, the components of what I read about this Uncle Robert, but never the full package in any of those experiences. So for Tom, for you to say that you actually had a couple examples of people that you did is like, wow. So that's why I could not wait for you to have this, to witness and hear your one of the examples in the book, and there are many, but one that really stuck out to me was Peter's sons were fighting and wrestling, and as young boys do, and they got smacked their heads together, and their teeth. One of them's teeth got really messed up to the point where they took him to the dentist and needed like oral surgery, and then Peter's wife was, well, wait, hold on. Before the dentist was like, I need to know because this is going to be like a big deal. I need to know if we're
Yeah.
going to do this, but I need your consent. And, and she was like, wait, she's like, wait, I have to call Uncle Robert. And then he had the audacity to say, well, I don't know. And you in the book as a narrator, people were like, how frustrating it was that she thought he would have that kind of knowledge, like
Yeah.
to need to consent with him about like apparently everything, and it was just so frustrating. And then three-quarters the way through the book, you would add things like, look, I know you as the reader are saying, you know, you should have recognized this. I know, but understand my point of view. Biblically, you were committed to being with your wife and were going to do everything you could to stay with her. But going back to the gateway, the conversation, I didn't mention this in the book. I referenced it at a surface level, but the conversation that I had with your brother Keith, and I remember it was a hot night up in the gym in our cabin, and the pastor that night, the speaker at chapel, made some comment. He said something like, "Folks, you need to know that God doesn't need you." And I don't know, to this day, I don't know exactly what he meant, but I remember it just didn't sit well with me. Like, well, then why did he create us? And apparently Keith also must have said something because usually we'd come back to the room, we'd talk about basketball or whatever, and he was like, "So what did you think of the message tonight?" And I was like, "Well, to be honest, it really kind of upset me. Like, I I think, why would he say God doesn't need us? Like, wasn't that the whole plan of him creating us?" And he was like poking me to try to get my reaction because the speaker really did sort of left it hanging out there. I don't know if that was his intention or not, but for days and days, I maybe weeks, like we kept coming back to that. I would love to reconnect with Keith, but I remember that distinctly because it was not the kind of conversation I was used to having in a camp cabin, and it was Keith that brought that out, and
Do you think God needs us?
I was smiling as you said that, Don, because I've got a quote. You can't see this without the camera. And so I loved it so much. I like, laminated. It says, "Good morning. This is God. I will be handling all of your problems today. I will not need your help. So have a miraculous day."
oh,
And I love that. So it's like literally right here. I can look at it. And,
we'll believe
and
you.
Don, the reason why it gets under our skin and it gnaws at us is because of our ego, right? We feel like the Lord needs us and the Lord uses us. The Lord commands us to do things, to work hard, et cetera, but he doesn't need us. And so if I can make an important a follow-up to that, is that when I wrote my book, in my mind, I was hoping that my, at the time, wife, we were still married, would have a road to Damascus type moment, that she would see the truth finally after all these years of being brainwashed. And it really hit me through this process that the Lord doesn't need me to save her or anybody else. He's quite capable of doing it on his own.
Yep.
Now, I'm still going to write the book, and I did, and I published it, and I still go out and speak publicly. I do podcasts. But it's a different mindset for us. He doesn't need us.
Mhm.
He uses us, and we are obedient to the call. There's a difference.
Sure.
Here's my take on it too, Don. I think I would rather not be needed than be wanted.
Mm,
So I don't think he needs us, but he wants us. I want to be wanted, and
yep,
that's far better than being needed. Needed to me means that God's incomplete by himself if he needed me,
right,
but he's complete on his own. He doesn't need me, but he wants me
right.
for whatever reason. He wants me, and I think that's the coolest part about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, and I think what worked me with the statement, that the way my interpretation was that the pastor left it that night was,
Yeah,
and it was probably his intent, to spark
for both.
conversation, but he
Yeah,
was like, "He doesn't need you," but he didn't elaborate, didn't say why, and it
that's
felt
kind of. Is
controversial, and I felt left like without.
that because he wanted you to come back the next night?
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. So coming back to this, I obviously I've never been involved in a cult and don't know the depth. It's obviously much worse than the church leaders I'm describing. All right. But I think what I took away from it, Peter, was just an awareness maybe of people who tend that way, people who have these controlling and maybe they're, they're not leading cults and they're not trying to control people to this level, but I think all of us have some tendency to try to exert control on the people around us in unhealthy ways, right? Okay, the question I wanted to ask you about this was, and we can talk about your future, and things that are going, current events, and maybe the hope you have, and even I want to get to the message you have for the reader out of this. But how did this experience change you? Like, it had to drastically change the way you think about who you are, about
Mhm.
your relationship with God. I mean, what are your takeaways on what has changed for you?
Great question. There's a couple things. I would say, as I referenced earlier, I'm a far stronger, confident man. Now, don't misinterpret that. It's not me. I am far
Sure.
stronger because I know what the Lord has done in my life. He rescued me from a tiny, destructive religious cult. And so, because of what I went through, like the refining fire, okay, that has made me stronger because I rely on the Lord. I don't rely on a spouse that I'm, afraid to ask the tough question. I don't rely on like the family guru. I go straight to the Lord because, as he says in James chapter 1, I'm paraphrasing, if you lack wisdom, ask, and he'll give
Yeah.
it to you. Don't doubt, he'll give it to you. I would say there's also some residue of what I went through that's maybe a bit of like a scab or like
Scar.
a spot on you that's been just kind of worn down. So maybe I don't mean to say cynical, but I'm a little tougher.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll make it hard for me to ever, marry again. I don't know. I hope not. And I can also say, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it up now, the tie into Camp of the Woods and the story that, I had lingering doubt for years about whether or not I did it the right way. Did I really ask the Lord into my heart? Did I surrender my life? Did I do it the right way, et cetera, et cetera? And Uncle Robert played on that doubt. I was about 13 years old. I was at the basketball camp at Camp of the Woods, some of my favorite times as a kid growing up. And one night when the message was given, I, in my own mind, quietly knew that I needed to accept the Lord, that I was a sinner, that I needed to be saved. And so I said the prayer silently. And then later that night, walking to the teepee, one of the counselors struck up a conversation. I didn't know him very well. And he asked me, are you Christian? I said, yes. He said, did you do it tonight? I said, no, which I lied. I was a shy kid. I was nervous. I didn't know the guy. And
Right.
so then for years I would doubt, well, gee, that doesn't that, prove that I wasn't saved. I can now say so many years later, no, it proves the exact opposite. I was a worthless little lying sinner, and it just proved that I needed to be saved because I still lied. It proved that I needed to be saved and needed a savior. And so now I look at that and think, well, it's such a great little testimony rather than being kind of embarrassed of the testimony. It
Yeah.
shows who I am. I'm a sinner, but I'm saved, and I
Yep.
did nothing to deserve it. And so, to directly answer your question, I am so much more confident and at ease in my faith journey, in my faith walk, because of everything I've been through. And I can see it's not of me. If I tried to rely on my own strength, I wouldn't get anywhere. It's all him.
I might describe your experience then as Satan attacked you, and he's a fool to do that because it just produces battle-hardened warriors.
Yep.
So you're now battle-hardened, ready for the next battle because there will be another battle.
And I wrote the book as, kind of a cautionary tale, right, for other Christians and other believers out there to let them know that these tiny little religious cults are real. They exist. These little cult leaders are real. They exist. And it could happen to anybody, whether you think it can or not. I can guarantee you, read my story, it could happen to anybody. And so on the outside, after having gone through this, yeah, boy, I've seen a lot. And I am much more capable now of being empathetic and being able to share my testimony. And now I think my testimony will hopefully help other people. I know it has helped other people. They've told me it has.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think your appeal for the book is broader than just being on the lookout for cults. I really do think these tendencies are in each of us, and we need to rein him in. And maybe if Uncle Robert had done that at some point in his life, he wouldn't have had the devastating impact that he's had, because he would have allowed God to change him, but he didn't. So I think it's good to know these tendencies for ourselves. It's good to know it for the people we're in contact with, and of course, don't get involved with people
Right.
trying to control you this way.
I actually took it in a retrospective way, and when I read about him and how deep his reach was,
Yeah.
I pray just a prayer of thanks that I had not encountered someone of that full package. And again, we've barely scratched the surface of what the book describes, and this won't do much more than that. But when he you explained what his view of women was, particularly there's a political example, and how he despised how little he thought of women, his view of Israel. There was just so many components that.
A lot of red flags there.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
and he was put all those things together, and no wonder, he was so destructive and conniving, and you name the word. But it was, like I said, like it shook you up, Tom. It shook me up too.
Some
And
of it is really hard to believe.
yeah,
I mean, wrapping your head around how devious someone can be, or evil. I think it's really just evil. It really got under my skin, Peter, and I think that might have been part of your intent, but it really got to me. I want to read, with your permission, I want to read a real quick section here, just so people get an idea how evil this guy was to you in particular, right? So this is an email you received from Uncle Robert. Dear Peter, Paige is not coming back ever. That's number one. Number two, the gall, right? You are not capable of loving her the way she wants and deserves to be loved, because as a result of refusing to know yourself as God knows you, you refuse to honor her. You are taking your stalking of Paige to a lower level by insisting on the retrievability of a marriage in total disregard of her being. I mean, to put this to pen, that someone would actually type this out and then click send. You,
we all have these little fantasies of,
I,
oh, that's what I want to say, but then you send, right?
yeah, exactly. I've thought maybe some stuff like that. I would never send this. You are not capable of wanting true change. That is why you keep promising and going back on your word. I mean, this guy, I mean, part of me wants to get a group of guys, find out where he lives. I mean, or at least egg his house. Something. It really irritated me the way you were
And that was
treating.
par for the course. I mean, that was par for the course. I got a lot of emails like that. And then, I got a lot of emails from Paige, which, again, I've changed her name, but, my former wife, she
Yeah.
started to talk and sound just like him. And then the real tragedy was my children started to sound just like him. So you got a little, like a glimpse of Robert, literally like someone who pawns himself off as a Christian leader saying, I'm stalking my wife because I don't want to get divorced. And
Yeah.
I'm incapable of receiving the Lord's salvation, which of course shows a totally incorrect view of salvation, right? Because it's not of us, it's of him.
Nobody's capable,
I
actually.
know. And
So,
and
wow.
then, so again, this poison, like a computer virus, went into, my wife and me for a while as well, and then into my children. So anecdotally, there was a point where my children were taught that the fifth commandment of the Bible, that it says honor your father and mother,
Yeah.
then you have a long life, did not apply to me, because it does not apply to fathers that don't love their children. That came straight from Uncle Robert.
Right. Show me that scripture. I'd like to see that.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
When
And there
I
was a, go ahead, Don.
okay, I was just going to say, uh, last time I talked to you, Peter, was this way. Was probably 4 or 5 months ago, and at that point, three of your five children had read the book.
Two and maybe some of the others. I'm not sure. Paige
Okay.
actually read it. Yeah, but I know two have. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. Obviously, they've all read it. It's just,
Okay.
uh,
So, and one I know had started it and it had a very positive effect on him because we don't talk much anymore. All of the kids early on believed their mother, believed that I was literally the devil, Satan, and a sorcerer, because that's what they were told by their Uncle Robert, their grandparents, and their mother, and so they believed it. And so they literally thought that that I was the devil. And then it's been a long process of trying to show them that I love them. I'm their father, I'm not perfect, but I'm not the devil. And so it is a different journey for all five of my children. They're all at different spots on the journey. And parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. And so I trust the Lord. I trust the Lord that He will work it out for all of my children. Because in the long run, you guys know this, your parents, that we're fathers, but they belong to the Lord. That we have
Yes.
the honor of trying to help raise them and teach them about the Lord. But
Yes.
they belong to the Lord, not me.
Yeah. So let me ask, just we just a couple things. You mentioned in the author's questions that you like to have a message for the book. What is the message you want the reader to take away from this book?
From the memoir "Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger."
Yeah.
Okay, it's really threefold for the Christian audience. I mean, and it goes to anybody as well. But number one, a strong marriage needs to have Christ in the center.
Yeah.
No parent, even though the parents can love the husband wife. No children, no pastor, no priest, certainly no family guru, and anybody that gets in the middle there, it's going to cause trouble. So you have to Christ in the center of a marriage, and then number two is that you have to maintain Christian fellowship. If I cut off my pinky dies, but I don't die. So if you are cut off from fellowship of other believers, that's
Yeah.
when you become susceptible to false teachers. I'm not saying that will happen. That's when you become susceptible, and that is where
Okay.
you get into danger. And then number three, and the most important one for the Christian audience, is that salvation comes before sanctification. You cannot switch the order. And anyone that tries to tell you to switch the order is trying, like Uncle Robert, to act as a gatekeeper to God. You are saved. That is a gift from God. And then once you are saved, born again, you start the journey. Then you become sanctified.
Yes.
You don't have to do these things first because you will never earn your salvation. So if somebody tries to tell you that, that is a false teacher. Run away.
I always point those folks to the thief on the cross, right? 11th hour salvation.
Right.
Jesus says, "You'll be in heaven with me." He
Right.
had no opportunity to do anything to redeem himself. He's nailed to a cross. What is he going to do? Right? It's the perfect example that takes away any type of works-based salvation.
Right. And also too, the kind of overarching, once you get through the story, it's like, oh my goodness, you may take a bath or go grab a beer, right? Like it's really draining. Like
Yeah.
it's an intense story. It is all true. I stand by every single word of it. And
Yes.
kind of the overarching story would be that, listen, they're there, right? Like I never thought I'd be in a cult. I didn't think I knew anybody in a cult. And yet I was in one, and they're out there. And we need to be, prepared and forewarned.
We
yeah,
do.
a couple things too that, going back to your experience in the book, I remember reading where, as a reader, I was so done with him chapters
Oh,
before, but you just
oh
kept trying,
my God.
and it was so admirable and honorable that it was your
You kept
wedding
sticking
vows.
with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Ah,
you said your wedding vows. Hey, when I said my wedding vows, it meant for life, meant for life, and to the extent where you would even like re-engage with him.
you were honoring him when he didn't deserve it.
Yeah, like this, what is it, the
Yeah,
Stockholm syndrome? Like
yeah,
when you're and
hostage. Yeah,
you give credence to, just and but then you did again 3/4 of the way through. You're like, I know, I know what you're thinking, reader. Like I should have, but here's why I stuck with it, and it was
yeah,
masterful the way, that you let the reader know that you weren't just trying against the wind. Like you understood. You were just doing whatever you could. But the way it did, the book ended, but your life has continued, and it's a privilege to continue to be able to follow, the journey with you. Because, like Tom said, we were like praying for you right away.
yeah.
A
So,
lot of people are.
well, speaking of that, like, how would you like people to pray for this? Because I guarantee there will be plenty of people who see this and would be happy to engage in some prayer for your family.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. So I don't even know if you guys know this, but my former wife has remarried. She's moved on.
Okay.
So really, my biggest concern is for my children.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have 5 children, and I love them very much. And as I said, it's kind of they are on different points of this journey uh,
Sure.
through life, and you know, I, I I pray every day that I will have a great relationship with all 5 of my children. And that doesn't mean that I have to be liked by them, right? Like that, they don't have to like me as a buddy, but they will at least see the truth and that we can have a relationship of father, son, father, daughter, and we can get reconnected that way. Because they've
Yeah.
been through a lot as well. I mean, we all have. I mean, we've all been through a lot. I had a very wonderful upbringing that I didn't have any of this, and
Yeah.
yet they had this growing up.
I
So
think too, from knowing you and knowing your family, and maybe let's pivot here a bit into, as we kind of wrap things up into um the young family and coming to camp. But and it's interesting because we're interviewing you tonight, and next week we're talking to Jeff Caliguire,
hmm,
and he is Mark Caliguire and Todd, and it's this family of. Honestly, no other way to put it, but you were like made for TV brothers. You were all athletic, good looking, nice, charming. You had all of it, and you were at camp, and so and strong, and in the blue team you described your father. It was kind of really, and there was a storyline that happened that thankfully didn't happen in real life, but I guess that kind of caught me off guard too, because for for you to have this experience was like, even despite how grounded you were with this awesome family, it still happened to you. Like you're a smart guy and you came from a smart family, and yet you still fell into this. And like that's knowing you personally made the whole story seem even more unbelievable.
Yeah.
yeah, I've read. It's I think Jeff Caligar is the one that wrote Habits of Hope, right? Which I've read that book, and
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
it's
we're gonna talk.
fictional, and there's kind of a story that's tied with camp. And so we're friends on Facebook, and that was a good book. To your point about like the Caligari family and the Young family, um, it's funny because there are some things about Uncle Robert that were truth, right? Like here's another key point. Cult leaders don't lure you in with utter nonsense and lies and evil and wickedness. Otherwise, they would have nobody following them. They lure you in by starting really good at first, and they sound good, and then they, twist and pervert things. So there was one little line that Uncle Robert had. I thought, oh, that's a pretty good line. He said, the God has children, not grandchildren, right? Like I can't be saved by Tom and Liz Young, my parents. My parents were unbelievable people. They're 88, 90 years old now. And just like, the Caligari, brothers, like we all are saved. We are children of God, right? So even though I did have this, wonderful family and I had this wonderful upbringing, it's my individual journey, just like it is for all of us, just like it is for my children now. And
Mm.
so I'm sure it was very difficult for my parents to finally find out about this because they didn't really know what was going on until
Right.
well after the fact, nor did my brothers. Just like it's difficult to me at times to see my children struggle through
Yeah.
life and make poor choices. But that's how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God's in control. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He does. That's hard. It's hard to trust sometimes when you see what's going on, but you have to give it over. There's really no alternative to letting
And the
God.
beauty of Camp in the Woods too, and I'll kind of just wax poetically, maybe not wax poetically, but talk about Camp in the Woods,
Yeah.
is that I'm sure Don and Tom, when you go up there, and if you go back or even back then, you would have had disagreements, right? You would have had theological, doctrinal disagreements, kind of on the fringes, right? But still disagreements with people, and they would worship differently. They might worship this way with this kind of worship music or that kind of music, whatever it is, and yet we still had fellowship. We still had connection. You could question me. I could question you. We had that kind of fellowship, even though we didn't always agree. And that to me is the beauty of the body of Christ, right? Like, somebody's a hand, somebody's the ear, the nose, the eye, all that, right?
Hmm.
You could still have these disagreements. And now we as brothers and sisters in Christ have to work through them. You are not allowed to do that in a cult. There are no disagreements. You either agree with the cult leader or
Yeah.
you are wrong. And that's
Yeah.
no way to live.
No.
And so Uncle Robert, and unfortunately, the people that still follow him will never be able to experience something like Camp of the Woods, where you can get together with a bunch of other believers and maybe you don't agree with everything, but you can still have so much fun and fellowship.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Here's what we're gonna do, because I'm going to talk about your newest book, and get that information out. I'm going to pray for us really quick, because I really appreciate this conversation. Love this book. I mean, before they read anything else, people need to read this because it'll open your eyes. And I think let's besides,
We've barely scratched the surface of it.
yeah,
Honestly, yeah.
it will. If it doesn't irritate you, there's something wrong with you. I'll just say it that way. Lord, love this conversation with Peter, and I love the redemptive story here, bringing Peter out of this bondage that he was in. And yet, my heart goes out to him for the remainder of his family that are still in bondage or dealing with aftermath from Uncle Robert. And Lord, honestly, I have a hard time praying for Uncle Robert, but please just get a hold of his heart so he can stop damaging people. And for Paige, I know she's moved on, but Lord, you love her and you know she's in bondage as well. So please, Lord, would you just put your hand on this family and bring the healing to the remainder of Peter's family, but also stop the additional damage that's being done now. And we just trust you, Lord, and for his children particularly, just pray that Peter could have a great relationship as he's asked for, and also that they could see the truth and know to love you the way that you want them to. Thanks so much. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pivot then, as Don would say, over to the new book. This is book 2 in a series.
Yes, correct. So the Blue Team is book 1, and then Wardrobe of the Wolf is book 2. So the idea or the story within the story is that the Blue Team follows Thomas as a player. And the message is that we are our own worst enemies, right? Your worst enemy is not the guy that won't pass you the ball or the coach that doesn't play you. It's your own mind. And when the Lord saves us, he saves us from ourselves, right? And so we are children of God that love basketball and play basketball. It's not our identity. It's what we do. Okay, so then the next book in the series, Thomas is now a basketball coach. And so it follows him as a coach and as a husband. And the message here is that, don't allow whatever it is, your career to totally consume you, that you kind of lose sight of what's most important of your family, of your wife, of your kids. And then, Thomas's wife starts to get kind of sucked into this tiny little religious cult. And it has a very much better ending than my memoir does. Because one lady, was like, Peter, I don't know if I want to get triggered because she read my memoir and she was worried to read this. I said, no, Karen, it's okay. You won't be triggered. Don't worry. And so, so this one is, from the viewpoint of a coach
Yeah.
and as a husband. And Thomas now really has to step up and has got the biggest fight of his life. He's got to save his marriage and his family. And then the third book in the series, which I'm currently writing, will be called East of Ashton, and it will be Thomas as a father. And I will just give you like a little brief little teaser.
Yeah.
Again, East of Eden in the Bible and Cain and Abel. Well, Thomas has now got two teenage boys, and there is strife and conflict between the two boys. And so Thomas has to, as a father, perform his most important duties, which is not coaching his basketball team.
Yeah.
It's to, love and point his children towards Christ.
Wonderful.
So you're talking about work-life balance. Did you experience that? Like, how much are you drawing from your personal life for these books? You said write what you know.
Right. Well, I draw a lot, and again, I mean, I always get a kick out of it because, this is fiction because Thomas in the book, he's smart, he's intelligent, he's a good player, and all of that. And I wasn't any of those things. And the team is really good. They make a run in March Madness. But yes, I played college basketball. Yes, a lot of these things did happen to me. Same thing with Wardrobe of the Wolf. It's almost like combining my first two books, The Blue Team and then the memoir,
Yeah.
and kind of using those experiences for this fictional story. But, certainly like Donnie, you alluded to it, I won't give it away. There are certain dramatic things that happen at the end of this book that did not happen in real life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dramatic things that happen in this book that did not happen in real life. But much of the inspiration for both of my novels comes from real life.
That's from your personal real life.
Yes.
Yeah. It's captivating. Yeah. So we've kept Peter for a long time here, but a couple things I want to do before we wrap up. Tom, I forwarded you a picture that Peter sent me. Maybe we could throw it up there, and then kind of just if Peter your a quick 5-minute camp experience in terms of there you go. So what was the card game we're playing here? So that's Bruce on the left.
That's Bruce on the left, who worked at Camp of the Woods.
Yeah.
And that is Gordon on the right of the photo, who he went to Camp of the Woods all those years. I don't know if Gordon ever worked on staff. I
Okay.
think we're playing code names at Bruce's house in Southern California. So Bruce knew the Calaguires really well. He
Okay.
would have been on staff in the 80s. Our oldest brother David worked on staff in probably the late 70s. And then Keith, of course, was on staff for several years.
Yeah. I remember him telling me a story, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was something he attended Pepperdine, and he was going to play volleyball.
I don't know about that. He did
Right?
go to Pepperdine. Yeah.
Pepperdine, okay, but he was maybe okay. He was playing volleyball, but he ended up either leaving or thought of leaving because it was just so beautiful that he couldn't study.
The funny thing is, he spent his first year, maybe two, I think his first year at Point Loma, which is in San Diego, which is also, I guess, beautiful.
Okay.
And then he went to Pepperdine. And what the interesting part is that his wife went to Pepperdine, but they didn't know each other at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so they didn't, I don't think they even overlapped. And then a cousin of ours went to Pepperdine. And speaking of Pepperdine, on the back of the book, Wardrobe of the Wolf, Ed Schilling is the current Pepperdine men's basketball coach.
No way.
Strong believer. And he
Wow.
wrote the book.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, cool.
yeah, he's a very strong believer and is a very good coach.
Excellent. So
Love it. We've been talking for weeks, maybe even months, about looking forward to this interview, Peter.
Yes, great. Thank you.
This has been fantastic, and I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
I love this book. As much as it annoyed me, I really did enjoy reading the book. I've talked to many people about it. My wife is probably tired of it, but
yeah.
Well, I could use all the Amazon 5-star reviews I can get. One of your questions was, you self-publish or Trisha publish? And I self-published.
yes,
And, it's a lot of work. I mean, the writing, hard as it is the most enjoyable part of it.
How do people get these books then?
So you can go to Amazon. I mean, you can go to, barnesandnoble.com, but the easiest way is just go to Amazon I have my own author page. All of my books, you can get them in ebook, hardcover, and paperback. And then you can also go to my website, authorpeteryoung.com. There's a link. You can also see I like to do book reviews, and I've done some public speaking as well.
We'll put
Okay.
that up. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you worked for ESPN for several years, like through all that, and yeah, it made me laugh. I'm sorry, in an empathetic way, but in Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger, when you were meeting with one of the ESPN bosses, and you got the sense that they were leaning toward letting you go. And
Yeah.
man, I had that conversation too with the Bills. And as soon as I heard the language change, I'm like, oh no, is this really where? Oh, this is really happening to me. Oh wow! And you described it perfectly in the book that, and it couldn't happen at a worse time for you because you were going through all these other things, but that was again. There's so much left on the table for people to read about. And Tom, thank you because I knew when our podcasts have been, just talking to reliving memories with people at camp, I was so looking forward to knowing what you would have to bring to the table to engage with Peter, and it just happened the way I thought.
Appreciate
Oh,
it. I
yeah,
think people are going to enjoy viewing
they
this.
are.
We'll try and get the link to your to
We'll do
put
that.
the books into the YouTube link and on your Facebook, Don.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I got some reading to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter, I am working on a second camp book that's going to feature the basketball clinic, and
Awesome. Can't
I
wait.
will be hitting you up for, some of the things that you've written. I need your permission to use it, but also for you to expand on that experience to add to it to however much you can. So thanks.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that book, and I'm happy to share my experiences. I loved my 3 years at that basketball camp. Loved it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Peter, thank you.
Been
Thanks,
great.
guys. Appreciate
Yep.
it very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
We'll talk to you later.
Good.
See you.